What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Mark Sibilia and Dan of MPP Marketing Group. You can check them out at MPPMarketingGroup.com. Before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Since this is part of two series, Top Agency Series and Top Israel Business Leader Series, the Top Agency Series, I had a really popular episode was with Jason Swank. Jason Swank built up agency to 8 figures and sold it, and then he had been buying up agencies, and then he has an agency group where he kind of helps agency owners. He kind of created the group he wished he had when he had an agency. That was good about the valuation space, the agency space, and business growth space. Kevin Hurrigan was another good one of Spinutech. Both of you would appreciate this one. Kevin had an agency back in 1995, and so he kind of saw the landscape of the internet, agency, business, and all of that, and saw kind of the ups and downs. So we'll talk about some of the ups and downs on this interview, because it's not always just like up and to the right growth. There is peaks and valleys in life and in business. So we'll talk about that as well. And then one of the popular episodes in the Top Israel Business Leader Series is Moise Navon of Mobileye, who's a founding engineer there. And Mobileye was acquired by Intel for $15.3 billion. But what was interesting about that story, and we were talking about this before we hit record, was that he talks about times where he had to tell his family, his wife and kids that, listen, we have to cut back on everything. There's no more eating out. There's no more extracurriculars because, money is tight and it's tough. So we just never know, and you just keep going. So check out those more and on InspiredInsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise25. At Rise25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, the accountability, and then the full execution. So, Mark and Dan, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background and make it look easy for the hosts so they can create amazing content, amazing relationships, most importantly, run their business. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships, and I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, you can go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. I'm excited to introduce Mark Sibilia and his son, Dan. Mark is CEO of MPP Marketing Group. And, Mark, I don't want to date you too much, but he has over 50 years of experience in traditional marketing and digital marketing. MPP has a lot of interesting use cases and case studies, one of which they were chosen to launch Uber Eats in North America because of their deep knowledge in the food industry. And that led the way to sign 127,000 restaurants in 18 months. And if you're thinking, well, Mark, he had a silver spoon in his mouth. He grew up from humble beginnings, working at a local pizzeria while still in school, and was able to identify a lot of opportunities for innovation and pioneer several successful business ventures over the course. And I think, those 150 North American cities in 18 months helped Uber Eats see results in revenue of, I think, $2.6 billion in their first year, which is pretty crazy. So we'll talk about starting from a print solution, then kind of going eventually to digital also. But I'm excited to have both of you. Thanks for joining me.
Pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
So, Mark, just start off for a second, talk about MPP Marketing Group and what you do, and then we'll go back in time a little bit. But what do you do?
So we are a full service agency. We provide traditional, like you said, traditional and digital services, anything from print, signage, to promotional items, pick and pack. We do some pick and pack for a couple of companies like Bosch and Messer. And we also have a complete digital division where Dan runs that. Dan is my son, and he's been in this industry for the past 17 years, and leads the whole digital team. So, excuse me. We go all the way from soup to nuts. We do a lot of listening to our customers. Customers come to us basically because we're known for our deep knowledge of the restaurant industry for the past 25 years. And we do a deep dive, do a lot of research, and use the digital world to give us answers on how to present messaging, how to present a company, and we basically look after all your needs. As you can see, we do some e-commerce sites for some people, for Bosch and Messer and for Uber
Crack
Eats.
House Jerky Company too.
Yeah, that was a fun one. And yeah, so we do it all. We're probably the best kept secret because we control the whole narrative, all the way from research to creative. We have recently been acquired. A small portion of the company has been acquired by a consortium, an aggregator of agencies with 17 other agencies, which allows us now to have better tools in digital marketing, for that is afforded to companies that spend $100 million a year in media buying. So that is the next level. And yeah, we're excited for the future and looking forward to growth.
There's two things I want to dig into a little bit on this. One is it's always interesting to hear kind of the evolution of services. Like right now, obviously you provide a lot of different services, but how it started back then and kind of how it evolved. And then second is the niche, right? Because I'm sure you could do this for any niche. So talk about why food in restaurants.
Well, it's a very interesting story. As you said, I used to work for a pizzeria when I was in school. And it's funny how 25 years later, I, specialize in the food industry and the pizza industry in particular, serving customers like Domino's and Papa John's and a lot of regional franchises. So I started out as a press operator, right when I finished when I finished my school, my college, and was a pressman, and then became a print broker. And
So talk about a press operator. For people who do not know what that is, what does
yeah,
that mean?
so well, you print catalogs, you print brochures, you print business cards, you get your hands dirty with ink, and
So you
you
buy a
burn.
big machine. I'm picturing you like pushing down a big machine or something like that. What is?
No, it's offset,
Uh,
offset. It runs fast.
okay.
There are web presses that run at 40,000 an hour.
Okay.
You
I'm
know,
dating you
the,
too much. That was like
way too
before
much.
your
Yeah.
before your time.
No, when I came into the world, offset was a pretty normal thing,
Yeah.
and
So you're printing
so
magazines in hard,
exactly,
okay.
exactly. My brother used to run a publishing company that ran a furniture magazine, and so I got to do all the catalogs for the furniture industry because I had an in. So we used to do a lot of a lot of catalogs, which they don't do today anymore. Everything is digital today. But then we used to do beautiful, and we had to match the color of the leather to the color, on the brochure, or else, it would be rejected. So I was really pushed in the print industry to provide very high quality, very high quality print. And I won a huge contract by the world's largest artist called Thomas Kincaid. I don't know if some of your listeners know Thomas Kincaid, but Thomas Kincaid sold more art than any other artist in history. He had 500 of his own galleries, and they chose us because we really understood the color. We actually have a patent in it's called Beyond Four Color, which extends the gamut of colors. Because CMYK, cyan, magenta, black, and yellow, only covers a certain gamut of colors. So we actually do a 7-color process, and we have a patent with that, and we received an award for ColorSuite, which profiles presses. Again, this is very, very technical. So I was very much in the print industry. And then, about, I guess, around the year 2000, I noticed that, um, the pizza flyers were just, red and green. And I decided, I had this brilliant idea that I'm going to go and hire the best photographer in New York who photographs for Wine Spectator magazine. And we hired him for a month, and we produced every pizza, pasta, Chinese foods, and we created, that's when the internet started coming on. We created content, and we went into the food industry to make beautiful flyers. And we started, making, food flyers. And that's how we kind of transitioned into the food industry. And then the digital world came in, ordering online came in,
So
and
really
social media.
quickly, Mark, so you had a print company, you're printing magazines for furniture companies, artists, and whatever it is. And then you're like, well, I think there's a need because all this pizza stuff is really ugly. It's kind of plain looking. And so you kind of took a chance. It's not like you had a client come to you asking for that. You're like, listen, I'm going to hire this person. It's going to be world class. We're going to produce amazing photos, content. And then, so how'd you eventually get your first client or customer in the restaurant space? Because like you kind of took a gamble, I guess you could say here.
That was easy. We found a pizza show in Vegas, and we took a
I
booth at
always
Pizza
wanted to go
Expo.
there just to sample it, but
The
so you
best.
went to the pizza show.
Yeah, we took a booth at the pizza show, and there was a guru in the pizza industry. His name was Big Dave Ostrander, and as we were setting up, he's walking the show, and he stops by and he looks at our booth and he goes, "Huh, show me what you do." And I showed him, our kit and some of the samples. We just made samples without names, just to give people an idea of what a pizza flyer could look like. And lo and behold, he says to me, he was giving seminars at the Pizza Expo, and he says, "Can you come to my seminar and drop a kit in every chair of my seminar?"
Wow.
Well, after that seminar, we had literally lineups in our booth, and we just literally wrote orders. And overnight success, we started producing millions of flyers for the pizza industry. And we've been kind of known, and we still do millions of flyers every month.
When he asked
Um,
you what services do you do, you had never really served pizza places. What did you tell him at the time? What
Well,
are the services?
he saw the mocked up flyers.
Right.
He saw the mocked up flyer. He goes, "This is beautiful. Nobody does pizza flyers like that." He goes, "I love it." And we kind of started a trend, and they used to, I remember Domino's used to have flyers where they used to show all the pizzas like in a little 1-inch squares, and you can't see anything. So we came out with a concept where you show one beautiful flyer with you can pick off the pepperonis right off the paper, right? And
Not
really make
kosher
it
though.
mouth-watering, yeah. Mouth-watering. And that's what he loved about it because it was so different. And so we showed him the samples, and he said, "This is the next generation."
Were you mailing them too, or would you work with a separate
Yes.
company? So you were mailing them. So you'd print.
So
Yeah, go
that's
ahead.
a great question because the problem with direct mail is that you don't know when it lands. Like, we would have to put it in Buffalo, and if you're in Ohio or California, it sometimes take a week, 2 weeks to get there, and you don't know what day. And the key thing about direct mail is, putting it on power days. One of my best friends, Michael Chido, who was the executive director of the Domino's Franchise Association, which was introduced to me by Dave Ostrander, Big Dave. loved it, and he brought me into the Domino's operation, and I learned about Power Days, and I learned about the research that they did when to drop flyers. So I had their calendar, and I
What's a
went to
power
the
day?
US. A Power Day is when most people order pizza. When most people come home and say, I want to have a pizza.
Is it a
So it
time
would
of
be,
day? Is it like,
yeah,
isn't we're not
like
talking like the Super
Thanksgiving.
Bowl, but like Super Bowl maybe is a power day? Is that
So the biggest pizza day of the year is Thanksgiving evening. Like Thanksgiving is a
really?
tradition for
Oh,
people to get pizza. So the biggest night of
didn't know that.
the biggest night of the year for pizza is Thanksgiving. So, it's usually if you drop the flyers on a Monday or Tuesday, you get very little response. If you drop it generally on a Thursday or Friday, you get a much better ROI because people tend to order on the weekends. They don't want to cook, and they've had a hard week at work. So, it's close to the weekend. And then obviously Mother's Day, Thanksgiving, and so we went to the USPS. Took me 2 years to get a proprietary workflow that I can control the drop date. And it's a very difficult process to achieve because you have to get it to the local post office on a certain day because they need 3 days to drop it. So we would make sure that it would arrive 3 days before the power day, and then every time we started a new mailing program, our CSR would call the USPS local post office and tell them we're going to start doing for mailing for Paisano's Pizza in your neighborhood, and we're going to and here's a letter from the Postmaster General saying that you need to drop it on that day. And basically, my CSR would definitely follow it through to make sure that it dropped on the right date. And people loved it because all of a sudden, and then at that point, there was no digital media. So that was the biggest portion of their advertising budget.
I want to get a little granular with this because I love direct mail because this applies to online, right, Dan? I mean, all the traditional advertising, direct mail, direct response is
Well,
the same
actually,
stuff as
direct
you.
mail,
Yeah.
the digital media is the killer of direct mail, actually.
You
There's a
know,
lot to learn. There's a lot to learn from the strategy of direct mail to be applied to digital media techniques. Absolutely. The theory is still consistent.
what was on, tell me, like, were you, obviously you printed this, you mailed
Yes.
it, and then you've basically through your clients, customers, figured out, okay, here's like really the best, most efficient way to drop these things to get the best results. But were you designing, I'm assuming you were designing the full flyer. What were the elements? Because we were talking direct response. They have to still pick up the phone, order a pizza. So talk about the elements on that you found to be important. Obviously, beautiful pictures that are so delicious. You just want to pluck it off the page. But what else is on there to drive phone calls?
Huge.
I
It's
can,
called menu
I,
engineering. Go ahead, talk about that, Dan.
yeah. So as Mark said, menu engineering is an art and a science that we apply to the designing of a menu or a flyer or anything that your eye looks at, to be honest. It can be the same theories can be applied. And it's a combination of color theory, it's a combination of pricing theory, it's a combination of positioning and placement that subconsciously guides the person looking at the piece to the products and items that you want them to order. So for some of our clients, we start our process with them at a very kind of fundamental menu engineering standpoint, where we look at their cost of goods, like what it costs them to actually make an item on their menu, what they're selling it for, what the margin is on that product. We find out who the best sellers are, who the dogs are, who the lost leaders are, all these kind of things. And then we can actually use that information to arrange the menu in a way that encourages people to order the most profitable items. And there's a variety of techniques to do that, where things are located on the page, whether or not items have boxes around them, or they have descriptions, or prices with dollar signs or without dollar signs, or is
Like
there
we're
a
looking
line
at this
that goes?
here. Dan, right now. If people are listening, there is a video component, right? So I don't know. We have Uncle's favorites, right? A favorite, which is obviously this sticks out. My eye immediately goes to this steak and blue, right?
Exactly.
That's what you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah, that is one element. So highlighting a particular product in a menu is a huge power play to drive people to that particular product. With these guys, with Uncle Matteo's here, this was a new product that they were launching. They wanted to draw attention to it. They wanted to get the volumes up so that they could order more supplies from their vendors, right? Get better rates on it. And this was part of the launch program for them, designing with this intention in mind.
Yeah, and you could see some offers here, which is deliver with love, free delivery on orders. So they have kind of an offer there. But I always, when I go to restaurants, do this. Like I'll look at, oh, what are the signature dishes, right? That I should know about. And some restaurants don't include that, right? That helps me as a consumer. It also helps them as well.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, some of the smallest things, things that you maybe even wouldn't consider, can have a huge impact psychologically on someone's purchasing behavior. Things like the color of the price, things like whether to include decimal places. Everyone's familiar with the 99 trick of, ending prices at 99, but it goes well beyond that. And there's a whole art and a science to it.
Yeah, I'm just pulling this up. This is so here it seems like you have a couple ways for people to interact with it as well. Let's talk about that because obviously there's a phone number, there's also a QR code that you have here, there's also text as well.
Absolutely. So we want, as marketers, to make it as easy as possible for someone to engage with a brand in their preferred method. So that could be through their website, that could be through their phone, through text messaging, that could be through picking up the phone and giving them a telephone call. So we have to try to make all those channels available to them. Obviously, we need to test and measure the effectiveness of those channels versus the investment required to support and sustain them. But where the opportunity presents itself, giving the customers the choice of how they want to engage with a brand can really go a long way to making the experience really great for the customer. That's one of the things that we can't control as an agency outside of the business, right? We always tell our customers, like, we can bring them to your door, we can get them through the door, but you need to make them fall in love with you once you're there. And by providing them with all these tools, all these kind of vectors for people to engage with the brand, we're trying to make that experience of getting to the door as easy and as nice as possible for people.
So, Mark, Big Dave was huge for you. Okay.
Yeah.
It seemed like you were swamped when that happened. Did that then take over? How did you handle all the volume? Did you go, listen, we're just going all in on this and we're going to not do the other stuff? What happened at that point? Because obviously, there's a capacity. You have a certain amount of printing
No,
capacity,
it's
staff.
unlimited.
What happened when you started to get that influx?
So the bottleneck in the beginning was the design and the creative process because you know um, when we promised mouth-watering photography and we really promised and we needed to deliver on the promise, the bottleneck was, so we had a number of artists come in and basically train them and explain to them menu engineering. We had them take courses, so then we would and then we would do the design, send them the proof, they make changes, come back. But we kind of adopted a systematic way to so first of all, as far as limitations, we have no limits because Toronto is probably one of the largest cities in the world for having print equipment. And as a print broker, I never owned machines. I never wanted to own machines. So what we would do is we would buy the paper by the truckloads. We streamlined it to one weight of paper, 70 pounds, streamlined it to two sizes, and then basically did a monthly run. So we have a monthly run. So you had to put your order by the first, You had to approve your art by the 15th, and then it would be going to press, and you would receive your order, by the last week or the first week of the following month. If you didn't approve it, then you got pushed to the next one. And that kind of taught our clients to be more vigilant depending on their deadline. And then, we could use 3 or 4 different printers. And what we would do is we would do group runs. So we would get orders for 30, 40 different orders per month. And then we would put it all, we would put like 6 flyers on the same sheet and then run them. So that gave us the economies of scale, increased our profitability, and made it possible to basically scale up.
I want to highlight one thing you just said there. You immediately went to bottleneck, which is interesting. One of my favorite books, Ellie Goldratt, The Goal. And I actually, someone just told me the co-author, Jeff Cox, wrote another book, Velocity, which talks about, which I'm listening to now on Audible, which talks about identifying the bottlenecks. How has that helped your business? Obviously, we see it in this instance. Are there other instances where you're like, was that natural to you, or going in and identifying bottlenecks?
Well, it's the reality, right? If somebody says, "Hey, I sent you the information 3 weeks ago and I didn't get my proof," I knew that was the bottleneck, right? So, we just kept adding, we got up as high as 10 artists at one point, when print was really pushing through. But again, we're designing flyers. We're not designing, spaceships. So, we kind of got into the rhythm. We had our photography, we had our content, and it was basically, making good designs using beautiful photos. And, we had even at the beginning of this process, we had a number of designs that we put online that you could choose whether you wanted contemporary or traditional. You'd have a horse and carriage in an old Italian, city walking through the cobblestone. That was more the traditional look, right? So we had so they would say, well, we want contemporary, and then basically that would give my designers some sort of, direction of which to go, so we don't have to go back and forth so many times.
So I could see the niche, right? You really took a gamble. If I'm thinking about it, it's like if I'm your business partner, like, wait, booths are not cheap. You want to hire these world-class people. You want to get a booth at a pizza show. We have 0 clients in this and no experience in this. It's pretty amazing. So I could see how you got into the niche part, right? And then that led a little bit to services, which is, the printing, the mailing. Talk about the evolution from there of the different services. Obviously, you got more food industry, food companies, restaurants. We talk about mailing, printing. Talk about more, as you added more services.
Well, so around 2005, the digital world started, coming through, and people were starting to think digitally. Email marketing started, and that's when, we had Daniel come in and help us with offering different digital services, and the transition went to now. Okay, you've done printing for us. Now we can also do your digital marketing through it. And then basically Dan took it from there and offered these services to our clients.
What did that
So
look like? So when we talk digital, a lot of things are flying around in people's heads. Is this paid? Talk a little bit more about the digital piece.
sure. So when I started working with MPP, I was one of those 10 graphic designers that Mark had. So I was there in the trenches.
What were you doing, Dan? Just before we go a little bit further on this, how did that happen? Because I'm sure we were talking a little before we recorded. You could have been like, listen, that's cool. You could do your own thing. I'm doing this computer thing. I'm going to do my thing over here. What was the conversation like to come into the company in the first place?
He owed us money.
I borrowed some money from my parents Because I wanted to go and be a ski bum for a year. And I moved after university. I moved out to Whistler, British Columbia, and I was there for 18 months. And when I came back to the city, I had to work it off. And I've been working it off ever since.
You're still working it out. Okay, so you're like, he's like, listen, I get this money. He's like, great, get to work and do this graphic design thing.
That's
Okay.
right.
Okay.
I always had a background in design and graphic design. That was where my interest lied, and marketing and advertising was a natural fit for me. So, you know, I would have got the same job somewhere else, you know, doing the same stuff. Luckily, I had that opportunity available to me. So I worked as a graphic designer, designing those menus and flyers. And then, as Mark said, gradually in the early 2000s, customers that we were building flyers for and doing mailing programs for, they started coming to us with more requests. Hey, you guys, you know, made this amazing looking flyer for us. Our website sucks. Can you do the same kind of thing for a website? And I'm like, sure, let's do it. Let's build a website. So we got
At
into
that point, what
website.
were you building websites with? You know, I know
Oh, we
like
would
now it's
create.
much easier, you know, just the technology from a technology standpoint. I'm not saying from a design standpoint, but you know, there's WordPress. What were you using at that point?
So at the time, we were building websites in straight HTML, tables-based HTML, but that was the era of Dreamweaver, Macromedia Flash.
Yeah.
You know, if you guys remember that stuff. And so we did some work in Flash. I remember, you know, Flash-based timeline animations were the bane of my existence for a couple of years there. Thank God that they've retired that software.
So
But
websites, I can see that they're like, this is beautiful. Let's clean up our site, or maybe they don't even have a site, and they're like, we
that's right.
need
A
a
lot of them
site.
didn't have. A
So
lot of them didn't.
websites, what was another thing that evolved?
Yeah, and then very quickly, um, social media came into play. We got a lot of requests from our customers being like, "What is this social media thing? How can I use it for my business?" And we started to develop an approach that focused on, you know, managing. Well, I should step back for just a quick second. At that around that time, we realized that now that we're doing the menus, now they're doing a mailing campaign, now that we're doing the websites for them, we were already into a little bit of email marketing for them at the time. You know, we really needed to present our services in a more strategic way. Up until now, we kind of been like a piecemeal
People
project
are
by
just
project.
requesting. They're like, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? And you're
Yeah,
just
and we're
doing
like,
it.
yeah,
Now you're
yeah.
like, we need to come in with a plan when someone comes to us.
Exactly. So really, that was when our big transition shifted from kind of just being like a production partner, right, into more of the traditional advertising agency, more marketing group model, right, where where clients would come to us and we would work with them to determine, okay, what do we need to do to achieve this goal of yours, right? Okay, well, there's print and direct mail, and there's digital services on top of it, Google search, email marketing, social media management, and then it's kind of just expanded and expanded from there on out. Now we offer a full suite of solutions, and it goes just beyond like the print and direct mail on the traditional side, outdoor, radio and TV, other kinds of broadcast medias. So really, we're equipped right now to operate, and we have been operating for the past 15 years as real full service agency.
I want to talk about some milestones. So obviously Big Dave was a milestone in my mind. Big shout
It
out to Big
was.
Dave.
It was.
Uber Eats seems like a big milestone too. So how did that happen?
They reached out to us.
They reached out to you.
They try. That's a really interesting story. We got a call from the vice president of marketing. So I don't know if you know, but Uber uses Toronto to identify markets. They use
Didn't
it
know
as a
that.
test market. The reason being is because Toronto is a very multi-ethnic city. We have little Portugal, little India, little Brazil, little this, little that. And they use it like when they offered ride sharing. They started in Toronto to see how that would work. So the Keiko said, my God, we're trying to go into restaurants. We're telling them, hey, you know what? we're going to give you the clients, we're going to place orders, we're going to pick it up, and we want 30%. And most customers said, here's the door. I don't make 30%. How do I give you 30%? Right? So they came to us and says, what are we doing wrong? I said, well, sign the contract and I'll tell you what you're doing wrong. So they signed an NDA. And the key word was, can you produce 25 to 30% more food with your current infrastructure? And they all said, absolutely, because, the food industry inherently is busy during dinner hours, so 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And they said, great. So if we bring you clients that you don't have and we pick it up, you have a number of benefits. You don't have to hire a driver who's going to sit there from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock and from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, where they deliver one delivery an hour. So now you're paying salary. Now you're paying liability insurance. Now you have all these costs. The driver calls in, says, my alternator went. You got to send him $200 because he can't fix his car. So I said to them, the way to do it is to say to them, look, what's your food cost? Well, your food cost is 30%. Average food cost 30%. Well, if we bring you a client and we deliver it, and you basically make 70% in every order we make. So give us 30 and you keep 40. Well, so they tried to, there's a region in Toronto, like a neighborhood called Etobicoke. They tried for 6 months to start it and they couldn't. We started it out in 2 weeks. We actually set up a call center model for them. We created the pitch. We sent teams of 2 people at a time to sign up restaurants, and we signed like 250 restaurants in 2 weeks. And they said, great, can you show us how to now take it city to city? So Daniel and my other son, who is a data scientist,
Did he owe you money
came.
too?
No, he didn't
Oh,
owe any
okay.
money,
Okay.
but he just graduated Schulich Business School, which is the largest business school, and he took a course for data scientists. He's like a physicist and a genius, and he came to work with me because we were working on the technology to profile presses. And so he was there, and Daniel and him came in, and they figured out a way to aggregate the best 2,500 restaurants that would be most likely to use Uber Eats, and they tranched it into 4 different segments. And obviously, the top segment was you have great food that is deliverable. You don't deliver, so that would be the top tier. And we just basically did free photography. We try to sign them
It's like a
first.
no-brainer
Then when
offer.
that was a no-brainer offer, and then just with one push of a button, we were able to identify the best restaurants for Uber Eats in every city, and they basically copied our sales center that we created for them in Atlanta, in Florida, in different centers, and we just kept doing like 10 cities a month,
They
you
should have given
know.
you
And
stock or something.
you know
Like,
what?
oh
I
my
keep
God.
saying all I should have asked for is not the $3.5 million contract. All I should have asked for is 0.001% of sales, and then it would be over.
I get a penny for every. No, a couple of things I just want to highlight there because it's really interesting. Just a statement you made with sign the contract and I'll tell you what you're doing wrong. I love that statement because I'm sure a lot of agencies just kind of go into that's your kind of proprietary knowledge that you've built up over decades. And there's a value in that. And some people may have been like, here it is, and they kind of run in another direction. So
Well, it's a selling proposition, right? It's
yeah.
the selling proposition to the restaurants.
But I like that for any business listening, like use that statement from now on,
Yeah,
right? It's like, listen, I'll,
sure.
I'll tell you what you're wrong, just sign the contract. The other thing is really the offer and positioning there. You really refine the offer and positioning from that because like it was almost similar offer, but it wasn't really positioned the correct way for someone to say yes. And then you kind of built out this no-brainer situation. And then the other thing is segmenting the list to really get, hone in on the most, the biggest success needle movers, I guess.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about, everything's like, oh my God, everything Mark touches turns to gold, blah, blah, blah. But then COVID hits. So talk about, there were some high points and then some low points.
Yeah, that was a shocking. That was, first of all, it affected everybody emotionally because so many people dying. My restaurant friends, which we've been usually, our customers never leave us. Once they come to us, they never leave because we provide such an incredible service with great quality, and we really know how to help them out. They used to call us and say, Mark, I think I'm going to go bankrupt. I can't afford the rent. I can't, because at one point, restaurant had to literally close and send everybody home for months. And that was a horrible time for us because, we lost 80% of our business overnight. I think from March 20th to June, we lost like 80% of our business. And that was a horrible thing. And the only thing that kept us in business really is all the government assisted, programs that said, don't fire your people. We'll pay you 75% of their salary. Just keep going. And our landlord was very kind to us, and he halved our rent in half. We have 5,000 square feet, and he halved our rent, and he helped us with that. And so it was one of those times that you didn't know what's going to happen, and all of a sudden, the most difficult time is when the government shut off the funding, and all of a sudden, I had a payroll of 20 people, 22 people at the time, and no income. So unfortunately, we had to let some people go. We had to condense our graphic design department. We had to condense, we really try to become efficient and get rid of redundancy, and then basically started building up the business. In fact, during that time, we started another company called Graphika Print Solutions, and management decided that we need to broaden our services not just to not just to restaurants, but to other industries. And that's when we got Messer, which is a $70 billion gas company, and Bosch Canada, and Caesarstone, and we went out to different industries to really focus on the print because that's what we were strong at. And I said, until restaurants come back and start thinking about digital marketing and all that, let's go to where we are very strong in and understand. And, Graphica has gradually grown from zero to, $1.5 million in sales this year. So we're about 70 to 80% there as before COVID, and
So
still
it's a
growing.
little bit, I'm not gonna say blessing in disguise, but like it caused you to diversify a little bit and have
Yes.
this and innovate. Or maybe not even
Yeah,
innovate, but innovate off of what your strength was.
exactly. Exactly.
I know we're right at time here, but I have one last question for both of you. Thank you for your time. This has been hugely valuable. I'm gonna have to re-listen to this. There's a lot of gems that are in this. My last question is, and before I ask it, I just want to point people to MPP Marketing Group. You've seen it on the screen if you're watching the video. You can check them out. If you know of someone in the food space or restaurant, send them their way, or we're talking about the print stuff as well. Last question is about mentors, and it could be distant mentors, like books, resources, or it could be personal from a business standpoint. So I'd love to hear each of your from a mentor perspective, whether it's one-on-one mentor in business or resources, books that are some of your favorites.
Dan, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say Mark is my mentor. I have learned more about business from this man than I've learned from anybody else in my life. And it's been great to work with him on a daily basis for the past 17 years. It really
What's
has.
something that sticks out? Is there like a mantra or something that he's constantly repeating
You know,
with
you
you?
know, Mark wants us to treat our customers like family and to really go out and go above and beyond for them and make them feel like we actually care. we actually care about their business. They're not customers to us. They're true partners of ours. And I think that's something that's really stuck with me. And I don't look at my customers as, disposable customer A versus disposable customer B. This is, Bob from this, and he's got a wife and kids, and he likes to do this. And, we have a great relationship with our customers, and the relationship building part of it, I think, is something that I really learned, from Mark, for sure.
What about I don't know if there's resources from like a book standpoint or anything else on that front that you've learned from throughout the years? And if not, that's fine too.
Yeah,
So I can
uh,
go ahead.
I was
No,
just going to say I don't read a lot of business literature. I try to keep up with the trade with my industry, right? Industry publications, but not so much on the
Yeah.
book side.
Mark, what about you?
so the big 4-0 hit. The big 4-0 when I went through some difficult, familial. I got divorced and really searching for life. What is life all about? And my niece introduced me to Kabbalah. I don't know if you know what Kabbalah is.
Yep.
And I started taking some courses to really identify who do I want to be, what type of person I want to be in life. And I've learned a very simple mantra, which is always care about the other person, always put yourself in the other person's position and act that way. How would you like to be treated? And how would you like to be talked to? And how would you like to be looked at? And and basically, Kabbalah is don't look for the self for the gratitude over the self alone. Always look for what could you do for other people. And I think that was really a turning point in my life where I knew that where all of a sudden you get this energy from not caring about yourself, because when you're going through a very difficult personal time, and divorce and 3 kids is a horrible process to go through, and you're really trying to find a way to find yourself in all this chaos, and who do you want to be for the rest of your life, and all of a sudden you say, it's not about you. Take yourself out of the picture and put everybody around you top of mind, care about them, and the universe will take care of you. And that was really, that year when I joined Kabbalah. It's really funny. If you want to talk about a milestone, I met a gentleman who had just, which actually led me to Kincaid, but he just patented a process for art called brushstrokes, where he prints it on PVC and he creates a form of the brushstrokes in 800 degrees and he makes it look like original art. And somebody introduced me to him, somebody from the Kabbalah Center introduced me to him, and he needed catalogs. He had a big contract with American Express, and he looked at me as the mentor, the 70-year-old man, all of a sudden. And I said, what is it that I did? And he said to me, just who you are, just the way you speak to me, just the way you approach anything that I come to you. And that year, after almost going bankrupt through my divorce, I made $1.5 million in that year from that gentleman, which was really a way to say, all you have to do is be kind, be passionate, and care about other people. And that's the mantra that MPP is. If you reach to us, we want to know you. We want to know your goals. We want to know your challenges. We want to know what it is that you want out of your business more than just money. It's not just about the money, and we try to take our clients through this process of understanding life. And why do you make pizzas? Why do you make, why do you make stones? What is it that you do for people that will enrich your life? That's basically it.
Amazing. Yeah, there was a guy I met, David Guillaume. It was through
Wow,
he's
I know him
do you know,
well.
yeah, so he's got Mary
Push.
Roos, number one of the top liquid
Crazy.
vitamin brands, and we were running a group of top e-commerce professionals because we were doing the podcast for a show called Prosper Show e-commerce. David was in the room, met him, and then later on I realized he's one of the top,
Brilliant. Yeah.
I don't know, one
Teachers.
of the leading Kabbalah teachers in the world, actually.
Yes, he is. He
So you
is.
know him.
I know him personally,
Yeah.
and I've known and I've taken some of his courses. You should go to Kabbalah.com and listen to some of his, he's got Kabbalah 1, Kabbalah 2, Kabbalah 3, and it's like a level of consciousnness beyond belief, beyond
Yeah.
belief.
He had
And he's
this like
amazing.
separate whole, I mean, I only knew him because of the e-commerce thing, but this separate whole life and everything in the Kabbalah world.
His whole life is devoted to Kabbalah, and the business takes care of itself.
So first of all, thank you both. This was fantastic. Everyone can check out more episodes of the podcast. They can check out mppmarketinggroup.com, and we'll see everyone next time. Dan, Mark, thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.